Hello everyone. So now we have finished computing the expected access returns for all of the stock in the sample. Moving on to the next step, we will need to evaluate how successful the FF3 model is in forecasting future returns. In order to do that, we sort of comparing the expected access returns to the actual access returns. So I have created a column here where I'm going to read in the actual access returns. There are two ways to do this. The first way, I will use the index function with multiple matching criteria. I will type index array. The array that I will use here will be the original table. The row number. For the row number, I will need to match against two criteria, the ticker name and the date. So I will type match. Lookup value, I will type two lookup values connecting with the and sign. The first lookup value will be the ticker name. So I will select the stop 1A and the date. Sorry, that should be the and date. Okay, moving on to the next argument, I will need to add in the lookup array. The lookup array for the first value, the ticker, will be the column B in the original table. I will select this column B, press F4, and moving on to the next lookup value, which is the date value, I will need to look for the date value in the A column of the table. So I will select A column, press F4. Now I finished the second argument. The last argument I type 0 for exact match, comma. Moving on to the column number of the index function. You see the access returns is in the H column, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that would be the 8th column in the original table. I will type 8. So for this multiple criteria matching function to work, we will need to use Control-Shift-Enter. Control-Shift-Enter. So you see now it's worked, and you can apply the same formula to the whole table. The second approach to do this is to actually use VBA code. You can go back to the original, the code that we did in the previous video and use offset function to return the actual access returns into this column. In order to do this with VBA, I will access my code I had before. I will create another range for actual access returns. Say for example, I type it here, dim actual access return as range, and I will set this actual access return equal to range AA1 to AA61. Okay, so now in this M loop here, I can use offset function to return the actual access return. So you see, before we use the reference cell, the ref cell is the month value that we need to calculate expected returns. So the actual access returns is actually just 2 columns away from the ref cell. So I will just assign the actual access return, right? And this will be also cells is stored in cell K. And this the value I need to find is 2 cells away from the cell E month. Sorry, from the E cell, the ref cell. So ref cell, right? offset. I do not go away from any row, so 0 for row offset, and go to the right by 2 columns, so 2 for column offset. Value from this cell. Okay, so let's reset this code. Right, so we go back to this one, delete this, and let's run this. Press F5. So you see now it's stored in the actual access return for me, but the problem is that it's stored on the header as well. So we need to correct that. I will go back to this. So this actually start from A2, right? And here will be actual access return. Okay, so I will reset my code and I press F5 again. So now I have the correct value for actual access returns. The reason I show you 2 ways to do it is that sometimes you have a bigger data set, the index function probably doesn't work very well. Okay, so now in order to compare the expected access returns to the actual access returns, for every month in our sample period, I would rank stocks based on the expected access returns, so I will rank them from lowest to the highest. I would then put stocks into 5 portfolios based on the ranking. So the purpose is that we try to reduce the volatility within the individual stock price, stock returns, right, by computing the portfolio returns instead of comparing stock on an individual basis. Okay, so I showed. So in order to do that, I will first extract stock returns by month. So similar to the filtering, advanced filtering function before, I will copy the date here into a separate column. I go to data, remove duplicates. Okay, so this is the date that I need to filter the data by. I would use advanced filtering function to filter the ticker, the expected access returns, and the actual access returns into these 3 columns here. So this will be my criteria range, and this would be my copy to range. So let's do that in VBA. I can create a new sub here. So sub portfolio sorting, so port sort, right? So I just create a new sub here under the sub, the expected return sub. Okay. Now also the first step I need to do is to define the ranges. So I will define my table here. Dim this time I will use, say, port data as range, and I set port data equal to range. So you see it's starting from X1 and go to AA61. Okay, so I'll include the header because I'm going to use advanced filtering function to filter data. Okay, so I will define all the ranges necessary for the advanced filtering function. So the destination table will include the headers here, these 3 headers, right? So I will we'll use dim port sort as range, and I will set port sort equal to range. it start with AE1 and it's go to AG1. My criteria range would be I would go day select as range, right? And set day select equal to range. That will be my AD 1 to AD 2. I also create a range for the unique day as range. Set unique date equal to range. Now it will start from AC2. I ignore the header this time, and AC7. Okay, so I will first try a filtering function first, right? So let's say I try to extract this data, this date data. I will copy this value into the date value. So the advanced filtering function, they form the syntax will start with the original data, so that will be port data, right? And I type advanced filter, right? So this is the function that I'm going to apply to the portfolio data space. So the first argument will be action. Type action, and I declare that action equal to XL filter copy. Okay, comma. The second criteria would be the criteria range. So I will type criteria range equal to my criteria range would be the date select. So I would type date select, right? And the last argument, the next variant argument will be the copy to range. So comma equal to the copy to range would be the port sort, which is the 3 headers here. So type port sort, right? And finally, comma unique equal to true because I want the unique values. Alright, so let's try F8 to see this work. So you see it extract the data for the first month here for me. In order to repeat this command for all of the date value in the unique in this range, I will put this advanced filtering function into a for loop. So I will start with, say, for j equal to 1 to 6. So for each of the 6 values in the unique date values in the unique date range. So here I will end this loop by typing next j. Okay, so this is the first step. I got obtain the data for each month, right? In order to repeat the function for every month, I will need to replace the month value into the criteria range here. In order to do that, I will put in the for loop a function that assign the date value into the criteria range. So I will type date select dot cells2. So that's the second cell in the AD column, equal to unique date dot cells cell j. So when j change value, it will also change the value in the criteria range. So now you can see, right? So I'm pressing F8 to check my code. Okay. Now we need to compare the expected access returns to the actual access returns. In order to do that, we will need to put the stubs into portfolio. I will use the function %rank to sort stubs based on the expected access returns. Using the workbook function, I can type %rank, right? The array will be the expected access returns, and I will sort the stub, the expected access return within the range. So you see, for example, the first stub, this guy here, stub 2, is the one with highest returns, and the one with 0 is the stub with lowest returns. Now, after the ranking, I will put stubs into portfolio based on the ranking. I will create a table here to store the results. So I have portfolio 1, which is the portfolio consisting of stub with lowest expected returns, and portfolio 5 consisting of stub with highest returns. So I will make a note here. You see the portfolio 1 are the one with ranking less than 0.2, so the bottom 20%, this one between 20 to 40%. Portfolio 3 will include stubs in between 40 to 60%, portfolio 4 from 60 to 80%, and portfolio 5 are the top portfolios. Okay, now I will also calculate the actual portfolio returns. In order to do that, I will use average ifs function. For example, I use average ifs here. I will average the actual access return, so my average range will be this column. The criteria range I will use is the ranking, so my criteria range would be the ranking column. So I will select this AH range here, the red one, and the criteria one is the ranking less than 0.2, so I will select the criteria that I've written on top of it. Okay, so now we can press enter, and that's the portfolio, the actual access returns of the portfolio 1. Now I will use VBA code to repeat these actions for all of the month in my sample. Okay, so I will make a note here, calculate ranking. Okay, now I will first define the ranking area, so I dim ranking as range and set ranking equal to the range. So you see this ranking it starts with cell AH2 and it's end with AH11. Okay, now in this section here I will assign each value of the ranking range. So ranking dot cells cell J equal to, now I will call out the function application dot worksheet function dot %rank, right? The first argument, as you could remember, is the range, right? And the range here is the expected access return range here. So that would be my port sort data column 2. Am I right? I define this as the port sort data, right? And this is the column 2. Oh, okay, I'm sorry guys. We define the port sort. The port sort is just the headers, so I will have to define that again. Okay, so let's go back to this and define dim I will try mxret, so month access return as range, right? And set mxret equal to range AF so this will start from AE, right? So I will just define the whole table here so I can use it later on. So start from AE to AJ11. Okay. Now I have %rank function here. Let's go back to our %rank function. The first argument is my access returns range, and I have defined that as mxret, right? And that will be dot column 2. Okay, and my third argument will be the value that I want to rank. The value I want to rank is also in the mxret columns 2, right? And I want to rank the value in cell J. Okay, now let's press F8 to see if it works. Duplicate declaration in the current scope. Okay, so the problem before is that I'm missing out these AE2 here. So now I fixed this problem, and I will press F8. So you see, I will reset my code, right? Delete this guy, and I will press F8. So you see, it's calculating the ranking for me. Oh, there's one thing that is incorrect here. So here is it should be calculate the ranking for 6 months. I mean for every stops within the month, right? So in order for it to be repeated for each stop, I will need to add another for loop inside the J loop. So hey, I say for example I have for I equal to 1 to 10 because I have 10 stop, right? And now this function here, the ranking cell I, yeah, would be this would be I, okay, and this will go to next I. So let's delete this, right? And now you see it will calculate the ranking of all my stuffs, and it should be correct, right? So we have ranking cells I. So for I from 1 to 10, you got the ranking cell I. Application worksheet function mxret column 2. Yep, that's correct. That's the expected access returns. Yeah, okay, so you see if you check the ranking with the expected access returns, this guy have lowest expected access returns and this guy here have highest expected access returns. Good. So now we will put them into portfolios and calculate the portfolio returns. Okay, so in order to do that, how many days do we need to calculate expected access returns? Basically, we have to calculate for 6 days as well, right? So I will define just make some adjustment here. Okay, right. So I will define this is my table, and as you know, we're going to calculate expected return for 6 months, right? So this will be my result table. So I will name this table, right? So I will go dim port return port red as range, and I will set port red equal to range starting from AG3 and go to A08. Okay, so that is my port return data. I'm going to fill in the value for the port return data. With the date column, my port return, so that will be port red, columns 1 and dot. With the first cell here, that's okay, sorry. Right, so up to this stage, I have finished calculating the ranking for the 10 stock. Right, after that, I will need to calculate portfolio returns based on the ranking. Right, so I will calculate the actual returns based on the expected ranking. Okay, so my port return column 1 cell, so this will be the cells J because it's according to the month, right? Cell J would equal to, so this will be the date value that we are dealing with, so that will be the unique date, also cell J, and we need to assign the value, so I go value. Right, so with the port 1, how do we calculate port 1? I will go port red, right, column, with the portfolio 1, that's the portfolio 1, column 2, cell, this would be the cell J as well, right, and that would equal to the average if, so I'm going to use the average if function here. So I'm going to call up the application worksheet function dot average ifs, right? So the first argument will be the average range, right? My average range is the actual returns range, so that would be my mxred range. So mxred in columns, so I call this table mxred, right? So these 3 columns, and the actual access return is in the 3rd column, so will be in column 3, right? So I finished my first arguments. Moving on to the next arguments. The next argument would be the criteria range. My criteria range would be the ranking columns. AH right? So the ranking range. So I define this as the ranking range, right? And that will be my first ranking criteria, my first rank criteria range. Now my ranking range would be, now this is my criteria. I need to, so the criteria in this section will be for the value, the ranking to be less than 0.2. So I just bracket, just use quotation mark and put 0.2. Okay, so now I finished the first one. Now I'm going to do the same. Okay, I'm not sure how to make it bigger for you to see. I hope you can see this fine. So basically I will just copy this to the other table. So you see this one will be the port 1 return, right? I'll just make a note here. So this will be the date, right? This would be the port 1 returns. This would be port 2 returns, right? Now with the port 2 returns, you see the port will be the port red. So the average range is would be the port red column 3, right? Cell J as well. The application worksheet function, the average range is still the same. The ranking range was still the same. But the first condition is I want it to be greater than 0.2, and the second condition is that so with the moving on to the second condition, I will have to specify the criteria range again, and my second condition is for the criteria, so for the ranking to be so we want this to be greater or equal to 0.2, and this is less than 0.4. Okay, so I'll do the same for portfolio 3, portfolio 4, and portfolio 5. So you see with the portfolio 3, this will be 4, 5, and 6. This one is the same, right? But we need to change this into 4 to 6. This go from 6 to 8, and this go from 8 to 1. Okay, so I can equal to 1 as well. Okay, so now I have everything covered. I can go back to my code, right, and I press F8 to see if my code work fine. So I will firstly calculate. Okay, so I will press F5 now, and this is my portfolio returns. With the portfolio returns data now, you can perform a summary statistic by going to data, click on data analysis, select descriptive statistic, and click on OK. Your input range would be the data, right? Click on the label in the first row and group by columns, summary statistic, output range. So I will specify the output range. Sorry, I select that. So this would be my output range. I should make sure this is my input range again, and I click on OK. Now with this the summary statistic, you should have sufficient information that you are required. You can use the mean and standard error to determine the statistical significance of the mean values. So you can calculate the t-statistic and the p-value if you want to. I just show you how to do that quickly. The t-statistic is simply just the mean divided by the standard error. And the p-value, you can use the formula. You can type t this to t. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I'll go back to that. So t dot this dot to t for to tell x here would be the absolute value of the t statistic. So I would type AB as the t statistic. The degree of freedom would be the number of observation minus 1. So I will apply this formula to other cells.